Hey, everybody. So I just saw some really interesting news, and thank you to my community member who called my attention to this. So the RE-AIM, or Responsible AI in the Military Domain Summit, was just convened in Seoul, South Korea. Now, there has been kind of the shock wave, or the kind of the inciting incident that made this kind of catch my attention, is that China did not sign on to this blueprint for action. Now, I'll get to the details of this blueprint for action in a little bit. But what I want to point out is that of the 100 nations that joined, only 60 signed on. So we don't yet even have general consensus or agreement on this kind of boilerplate framework, and it is very boilerplate. I'll go over the details of this blueprint in a second. But what I wanted to share was some of the key points that I noticed in this article from Reuters. So first, about 60 countries, including the U.S., and so that's including us Americans, endorse the blueprint. Now, it's a non-binding, non-legally enforceable thing. It's more of a setting good intentions kind of thing. So even though it's not even binding, we still only got 60% of people to sign on. China notably opts out. Now, in terms of things that are really interesting, there's some boilerplate, stuff like, we're making concrete steps and so on and so forth. But one of the things that is on this is the introduction of AI and WMD, or weapons of mass destruction. So basically, one of the points of this agreement is to prevent AI from using, how do I word this? How to get people on board with agreeing to not use AI to promote WMD. That's a little bit convoluted of way of saying it. Like I said, we'll get to the details in just a minute. Now, China was one of the nations that sent a representative but did not back the document. So they were present. So the conversations are happening, but they stayed out. And what I'll talk about in a minute is why none of this is surprising to me at all. Having studied not just China and Chinese history and Chinese philosophy, but also modern geopolitics and military strategy. So we'll get into all that as the video proceeds. Now, this is really the key line right here that I want to really call out. We also need to be realistic that we will never have the whole world on board, Defense Minister Breckelmans said. How do we deal with the fact that not everyone is complying? That is a complicated dilemma that we should also put on the table. So this is kind of one of the things that a lot of people have been talking about in terms of AI safety, is that you're never going to get the whole world on board. And there's some very good reasons for that, which I'll go over in just a second. Now, it took a little bit of digging, but here's the actual framework that they proposed. And it's basically 20 points about the whole idea of what is AI going to be doing, and how should we use it. I'm not going to read it to you line by line, but what I will do is show you that I summarized it in Claude. And so, a lot of it is real basic stuff, like affirm that AI should maintain peace and stability. And so this is a summary of the document that 60 nations signed on. Basically, again, good intentions. So 60 nations, including the U.S., said AI should maintain peace and stability. AI should, or recognize that AI can enhance military operations and humanitarian efforts. I agree with that. AI risks, acknowledge that AI is potentially dangerous in military applications. Yep. High impact areas, identify critical AI military applications. Yep. Needing policy attention. This is actually a big conversation that I'm having behind the scenes, which is, where is AI going to make the biggest impact and where are the biggest risks? WMD proliferation, so stress the prevention of AI use in WMD proliferation and maintaining human control over nuclear weapons. The fact that China didn't sign on, this is what's causing a little bit of anxiety and heartburn. But again, that's just in the conversational sphere. I'm not surprised that China wouldn't sign on. And actually, let me just use this opportunity to tell you why. So the principle here is, okay, many of us agree that you should not put AI in control of existential weapons, such as nuclear weapons. So you might say, well, China has rational self-interest, so they should agree to that. But why wouldn't they? And the reason is because artificial intelligence basically could serve as a dead man switch. Now, I'm not saying that they disagreed or they refused to sign it for this one thing. However, There's lots and lots of reasons that China might have refused to step up and play ball. But from a geopolitical and strategic standpoint, it would make sense for China to ultimately one day put AI in charge of launching nuclear weapons. And the reason is because if you have a dead man's switch, so a dead man's switch is basically the idea that you have a fail-safe, so that even if humans are incapacitated, the thing will still go off. And that actually serves as another layer of deterrent, so that even if, say, for instance, you have a nuclear or a nuclear missile that is equipped with artificial intelligence on board so that it can make its own decisions about when to launch, then even if you try and shut it down from the outside, it might go off. Now, of course, people are joking about this. There's a very old movie, I think it's from the 1970s, like 1974, called Dark Star, where there's a nuclear weapon with AI that decides to blow itself up. It's a very cheap movie, and it's actually it's comically bad. But anyway, so some people are reacting to this news with that. So they're from a strategic standpoint, it's like, well, okay, we know that China isn't going to play ball. They're not going to agree with some of these boilerplate things. But what I want to point out is a lot of these things are really boilerplate ideas, which you might say, like, well, why would China not agree with some of these boilerplate ideas if they don't want to escalate? And the reason is because again, it's a matter of the fact that we live in what's called an anarchic world. And so in an anarchic world, there is no higher power that you can call. You're pretty much out there on your own. And so as long as China is playing second fiddle to America, they're going to want to maintain some level of strategic ambiguity, which of course America does to China. So, what goes around comes around. But this level of strategic ambiguity basically says, okay, well, China's not going to agree to these boilerplate things. So if they're not going to agree, then a whole lot of other nations are going to follow suit. And again, if we only have 60%-ish, give or take a little bit, of people agreeing with some boilerplate stuff, we've got a lot more work to do to come to global consensus on AI safety and AI policy. Now, one thing I anticipate is that because China would refuse to comply with this idea, and to be fair, there's a lot of other basic boilerplate stuff like data governance, acknowledge the need for discussions on data management and military AI. This is really basic stuff. So some of the more hardline voices in the AI safety community might say, well, this is even more evidence that we need to pause immediately. But that's one way to read it. And another way to read it is this is even more evidence that pause is kind of DOA. It's not an optimal strategy. But the way that I read it is that it's really good that the powers that be are having these conversations. And I realize that this piece of news is relatively dry in the grand scheme of things. But I thought that it was important to share. So with all that being said, I'll make sure that the links to all the various articles are available in the description. And thanks for watching. Cheers. Have a good one.